light, dim the streets in moonlight bright. We dissect the cinematic art, real by real we pull apart.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Real Talk. I am pumped about today's film, the last in our series on coming of age films directed by women. I'm your host Josh, and today we're talking about Valley Girl from 1983, a movie that didn't just capture the spirit of the 80s, it kind of redefined how we look at teen culture, how we talk, and honestly, how we see the world. And it's not just because of the unforgettable slang. This film is a unique mix of the sweet and the subversive. So if you haven't seen it yet, my suggestion is pause, go watch it and come back. But if you don't want to do that, let me break it down for you. Valley Girl is set in, well, the Valley, the San Fernando Valley of California to be exact. And let me tell you, this place is more than just a setting. It's practically its own character in the film. This is where our two main characters, Julie, played by Deborah Foreman, and Randy, played by none other than a young Nicolas Cage, they come from completely different worlds. Julie, your typical Valley Girl, popular, pretty, and living the stereotypical California dream. Randy, on the other hand, is a punk rocker from Hollywood. He's rebellious, a little rough around the edges, and totally not the type of guy Julie's supposed to fall for, according to her friends at least. But of course, they meet, sparks fly, and we're off on a whirlwind romance that's as chaotic as it is oddly beautiful. And it's amazing that this film, even though it fits into the teen romance genre, it doesn't follow all of those usual rules. In fact, it kind of flips the script. Instead of being just another fluff piece about high school crushes, Valley Girl is a coming-of-age story with real depth. It's about identity, it's about finding yourself, and don't get me wrong, it's also about some of the classic teen stuff like parties and heartbreak. But it does all of that with a unique twist, showing us two characters who are from completely different worlds, yet somehow make sense together. But what I think makes Valley Girl truly stand out is how it taps into this universal feeling of wanting to break free from the expectations that are placed on us. You've got Julie, who's trying to navigate the pressures of being the perfect Valley Girl, and you've got Randy, this outsider who's not looking for approval. He just wants to be real. And that contrast, that clash of worlds, makes their connection so intriguing and, dare I say, kind of magical. So we're not just talking about the romance today, though. Trust me, we'll get there, but we're also going to dive into the cultural impact of Valley Girl, how it changed the teen movie game, and the key themes that still resonate today. We'll touch on things like class, identity, self-discovery, and how a movie about 80s teenagers can still feel so fresh. But first, before we get into all of that, I want to take a moment to talk about something that's impossible to ignore in Valley Girl. It's absolutely iconic portrayal of Val speak, that quirky, unmistakable way of talking that became synonymous with the Valley and, let's be real, the entire 80s. It's no surprise that a lot of the dialogue here has stuck with us for decades. So before we get into the specifics of the plot, let's take a step back and explore the cultural significance of Valley Girl, because honestly, this film was and is a cultural phenomenon in more ways than one. All right, enough about all that. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take a deeper look at the backstory of Valley Girl, its director Martha Coolidge, and how the film came to life in a time when Hollywood was ready for something new. Hey, need a boost without the crash? Head over to dubby.gg, that's dubby.gg, for all your energy drink needs. No sugar, no fillers, just clean focus and serious flavor. And here's the kicker, Use the code REALREAL, REALREEL, at checkout and score 10% off your order. That's REALREAL, one word, for 10% off at w.gg. Fuel up, stay sharp, keep it real. Looking for chills that crawl up your spine and reviews that cut deeper than a butcher's blade? Welcome to Real Talk Horror Edition, where classic slashers, indie creepers, and cult nightmares are dissected with a bloody passion. Whether you're into slow burns or splatterfests, we've got the guts, the gore, and the geek out. So dim the lights, press play, and let your darkest curiosities run wild. Real Talk Horror Edition, where horror lives and breathes. Real horror, real talk. Available anywhere you get your podcasts. All right. Like I said, before we get into all of the details of the plot, let's take a step back and talk about the woman behind the camera, Martha Coolidge. Now, when Valley Girl came out in 1983, Martha was still relatively unknown in Hollywood. In fact, at that time, she was more of a hidden gem, someone who had worked mostly on smaller indie films. But this movie, this turned into her major standout. Before Valley Girl, Coolidge had already begun carving out a niche for herself in the indie film scene, directing films like Not a Pretty Picture and Rambling Rose. She had the talent, but she hadn't yet broken into the mainstream. Valley Girl was the film that catapulted her into the spotlight. And it's interesting that even though it was a teen movie, Coolidge didn't approach it in a way that you might expect. Because while most teen movies at the time were filled with cliched stereotypes, predictable plots, and really a lot of fluff, Valley Girl had something different. It had depth. It had heart. Martha Coolidge, as a woman in the director's chair, was part of a small but growing wave of female filmmakers in the early 80s, ones who were really starting to push boundaries in an industry that was overwhelmingly male. This was the time when directors like Penny Marshall and Amy Heckerling were beginning to make waves. But Coolidge was particularly unique because she wasn't interested in just making another teen flick. She didn't want to make something that was all surface level, something that treated its characters as nothing more than jokes or stereotypes. Instead, Coolidge aimed to tell a story about real, flawed characters navigating relationships, identity, and their place in the world. And that is exactly what makes Valley Girl stand out. At a time when teen movies were often about the popular girl and the bad boy falling in love in a very predictable way, Coolidge took a nuanced approach. Sure, you've got that classic boy from the wrong side of the tracks meets popular girl storyline. But this film goes deeper than that. Julie, the Valley Girl, is more than just a superficial character obsessed with shopping and popularity. She's a girl who's struggling with her own sense of self and trying to figure out what matters in her life. And Randy, the punk rocker from Hollywood, isn't just a rebellious outsider for the sake of it. He's a guy searching for belonging, someone who feels disconnected from the world around him. They meet in a world full of judgment and misunderstandings, and what follows is a romance that challenges not just their own ideas of love and identity, but also the world that tries to put them into boxes. And let's talk about the cultural moment when Valley Girl was made. The early 80s were a time of huge change in Hollywood. This is when the indie film movement just really started to get that little inkling, that seed planted to start gaining momentum. And more filmmakers began to break away from the traditional studio system to tell some more personal, more subversive stories. Filmmakers were starting to experiment with new ways of storytelling, and Valley Girl is a great example of how this shift allowed for more creative freedom. Martha Coolidge was able to approach the film in a way that's both fresh and relatable, making it not just a teen rom-com. It became a window into two very different subcultures coming together and showing that maybe those differences weren't as big as they seemed. Valley Girl also came at a time when Hollywood was starting to acknowledge the power of youth culture. Teenagers were no longer just passive consumers of media, they were the ones shaping the culture. The film didn't just appeal to teens, it gave them a voice. And that's where the impact of the Valley Girl vernacular comes in. The movie helped popularize what we know now as Val speak, a kind of slang that's unique to Southern California's San Fernando Valley. Words like totally and phrases like gag me with a spoon became cultural staples, and people everywhere started adopting these phrases into their everyday speech. It was funny, it was exaggerated, and it was completely unique to that particular region. But what Valley Girl did really well was showing how these words and phrases weren't just part of a fashion statement or an aesthetic, they were a reflection of a generation's way of speaking and viewing the world. This quirky vernacular became part of the cultural fabric of the 80s, making the film an essential touchstone for anyone interested in that era. But it wasn't just about the slang or the setting. Valley Girl gave voice to the people living in this world. It didn't look down on its characters or their lifestyle. It embraced them. It acknowledged the superficiality of the Valley Girl trope, but it didn't stop there. It took the time to show the layers behind that stereotype. Julie may be part of the Valley Girl scene, but she's also a person with real emotions, real hopes, and real fears just like anyone else. And Randy isn't just the bad boy rebel with no cause. He's a character with his own set of challenges and his own sense of vulnerability. Coolidge didn't just tell a love story. She ends up challenging our perceptions of what it meant to be a teenager, to be a girl, to be a guy, to try and figure out who you are in a world that often tells you who you should be. So what makes Valley Girl such a cultural milestone is that it wasn't trying to cash in on trends or give people what they thought they wanted to see. Instead, it tried to give its audience something more meaningful, something that felt both grounded in its time and ahead of it. It became more than just an 80s teen flick. It became a statement about identity, class, culture, and love. All right, now that we've gotten some background on the film, its director, and its place in history, it's time to dive into the heart of the movie, the story itself. But before we do that, I want you to think about how Valley Girl speaks to those universal feelings we all have about finding our place in the world. Whether you would categorize yourself as a Valley Girl, or a punk, or somewhere in between, this movie has something for everyone. So next, we'll break down the plot and characters, because this is where the magic really happens. All right, now let's dive into the heart of Valley Girl, the story and the characters, because honestly, this is where the movie truly shines. At first glance, you might think this is just another one of those girl falls for bad boy stories, right? And it kind of is, but it's also so much more. So let's start with Julie. She's a high school girl living in the San Fernando Valley, blonde hair, bright clothes, and the typical Valley Girl persona that you might imagine from any other movie made in the 80s. She's got the friends, the boyfriend, the whole perfect life that comes with fitting into the social world. She's dating a guy named Tommy, played by a young, very 80s looking Michael Bowen, who's your classic popular guy. jock, good looking, bit of a jerk. Julie seems to have it all, until she doesn't. Enter Randy, played by none other than Nicolas Cage in one of his earliest roles. This is when he still had that wild energy, the one that would make him one of the most unforgettable actors in Hollywood. Randy is everything Julie's world isn't. He's a punk rocker from Hollywood. He's got messy hair, leather jacket, and an attitude that kind of screams, "Don't mess with me." He's the outsider, the guy who doesn't fit in. And immediately, you can see why he's so different from Julie's world. But somehow, there's an undeniable pull between them, and you know they're headed for something that will change both their lives. Now, here's where Valley Girl takes a turn from what you might expect from a typical teen romance. It could have easily just been girl meets bad boy trope, where they fall in love, face some opposition, learn a lesson, and get together. But Martha Coolidge gives the characters a lot more substance than you'd usually see in this kind of film. Julie isn't just a shallow Valley Girl. She's trying to figure out who she really is in a world that's pretty set on defining her by what she wears, who she hangs out with, and what kind of boyfriend she has. At one point, she even calls herself a drama queen, which, let's be real, isn't too far off for a teenager trying to navigate identity and expectation. Julie's whole life up to this point has been shaped by her social group and her family. But when Randy comes into the picture, she starts questioning everything. Is this the life she really wants? Or is she just playing the part everyone expects her to? It's one of the core themes of the film, self-discovery. And we've all been there, right? Maybe not the same way Julie has been, but we've all had those moments of wondering, am I living the life I really want? Or am I just going along for the ride? Well, now let's talk about Randy. Because on the surface, he could have easily just been the typical cool rebel. The guy who's too tough for the Valley Girl scene. The one that's there to challenge the system and show Julie what she's missing. But Randy isn't just a character defined by his attitude or his punk rock music tastes. He's a guy with dreams, with depth, and most importantly, he's not quite sure where he fits into the world either. He's not the one who needs to save Julie from her life. He's just trying to figure himself out as well. And that's something I think a lot of people miss when they first watch this film. Randy's rebelliousness isn't just for show. It's him trying to escape the pressures to conform to the image everyone else has for him. And that's where Valley Girl really does something special. It doesn't fall into the trap of having one character save the other. Instead, these two characters save each other by challenging each other's perceptions of who they are and who they could be. They don't change each other. They don't change their lives because of love. But yes, they fall in love. But they do it because they push each other to step outside their comfort zones and to see the world differently. It's a relationship that's about learning to be authentic, which is a fresh take in a genre where the bad boy often just makes the good girl fall in line. Both Julie and Randy evolve throughout the film, and it's really interesting to see how they handle it. For Julie, it's about breaking out of the perfect little bubble she's been living in. She's realizing that there's more to life than what she's been told to want. More than just being the cheerleader, more than just having a perfect boyfriend, and more than just being accepted by the right crowd. She has to decide if she's willing to risk losing her friends and her social standing to explore something real with Randy. And for Randy, it's about finding a place where he can belong without giving up who he is. And there's a moment in the film where he talks about how people like him are always told that they're not good enough, but he's not about to let that define him. And he shows Julie that You don't have to change yourself for anyone. And this is where the movie really flips the script on the typical opposites attract storyline. Because it's not about Julie being saved by Randy's rebellious charm or Randy fixing Julie's life. They don't come from different worlds to create conflict for conflict's sake. They come from different worlds because those worlds have something to offer the other. Julie gets to see life outside the bubble she's been living in, and Randy gets to see that there's more to life than just defying the system. Something that stands out, especially when you compare Valley Girl to other teen movies from the 80s, is that both of these characters are allowed to evolve on their own terms, and their growth isn't tied to the other person's needs. They don't complete each other, they just help each other to realize that they're both already enough as they are. It's this idea of growth, of independence, that makes the romance feel grounded in reality. Julie and Randy aren't just two teens stumbling through love, they're two young people navigating the complexities of who they are and how they fit into the world. And it's messy and it's awkward, and that's what makes it real. And I think that is what makes this film special, because it's not just a fun 80s teen movie about love. It's really a coming-of-age story about figuring out who you are and what you really want in life. It's about finding someone who encourages you to be your true self, not someone who expects you to fit into a mold. And let's be real, who doesn't need a little Randy in their life? Alright, now that we've gotten into the meat of the plot and characters, let's start our deeper dive into the themes of the film, the messages it's trying to send, and how it goes beyond that surface level teen romance. Stay tuned, because this is where Valley Girl really shows how much more it has to say than just boy meets girl. Alright, now let's really sink our teeth into the themes and symbolism of Valley Girl. So this film explores some pretty hefty ideas. They're all wrapped up in a fun and colorful package, but it's about class, identity, and the way society expects people, especially women, to behave. The story of Julie and Randy, as unlikely as it seems, speaks to something much deeper than teen romance. Julie comes from a world where wealth, status, and fitting in are at the forefront of her everyday life. She's your typical Valley Girl, part of a social elite, surrounded by friends who are more concerned with the brand of clothes they're wearing and who's dating whom than anything that really matters. But here's the thing. While she is surrounded by all this luxury and the idealized suburban lifestyle, there's something hollow about it. Julie is looking for more. She's not satisfied with the surface level reality of her life. And that's something that a lot of people, especially young women, can relate to. The expectations placed on her, they're stifling. She's expected to act a certain way, be a certain type of girl, and live a certain kind of life. But deep down, she wants to break free from that mold and discover something more real, more authentic. And that's where Randy enters the picture, because Randy is everything that she isn't. He's rebellious and rough around the edges, and he rejects all the norms that Julie's life has been built on. He comes from the grittier streets, where life isn't about looking perfect or being part of the in crowd. Randy's all about being himself, and his punk rock attitude says, I don't care what you think of me, I'm doing my own thing. At first, you'd think this is that classic opposites attract story, But as you get deeper into it, you start to realize that the attraction isn't about them being from different social circles. It's about the tension between conformity and rebellion, between wanting to fit in and wanting to stand out. Their romance becomes a metaphor for this larger struggle that so many young people face. Do you play by society's rules, or do you carve your own path, even if it means being an outsider? Julie's struggle is a familiar one for many of us, especially when you think about how adolescence is this time of self-discovery, intense self-discovery. We're all trying to figure out who we are, what we stand for, and where we fit into the world. And for Julie, it's not about choosing between Randy and her old life. It's about figuring out who she truly is, separate from her friends, her family, and everything she's been told she's supposed to be. It's the classic coming-of-age dilemma, one that so many people experience as they grow up. Do you stay within the confines of what's expected of you, or do you step outside the bubble and risk losing everything for the sake of your own truth? And the tension between these two choices is beautifully captured in the visual language of the film. Valley Girl is full of that quintessential 80s aesthetic. You know what I mean? The neon colors, big hair, and bright fashion and vibrant music. But all these visuals serve more than just a nostalgic purpose. They really represent the contrast between Julie's world and Randy's world. Julie's suburban valley life is bright and shiny, almost to the point of being artificial. It's all about appearance, surface level beauty, and social status. But Randy's world, the punk rock scene, is raw, unpolished, and filled with rebellion. And in that rawness, there's an authenticity that Julie is craving, but can't quite reach on her own in her world. And visually, the film makes this contrast clear by how it portrays both of these worlds. Julie's life is framed by the clean lines of her suburban home, the perfectly manicured lawns, the pretty pastel colors, everything that screams American dream on the surface. But when we see Randy's world, darker, messier, sharp edges and textures, it's all chaotic and noisy and full of energy. And that's not just because Randy is from Hollywood, it's because this world represents freedom, individuality, and the rejection of societal expectations. And the contrast between the two worlds is more than just a visual tool. It is symbolic. Julie's suburban life represents the constraints of class, status, and the roles that society expects her to play. It's safe, but it's also suffocating. Randy's world, on the other hand, represents the complexity of individuality and that beauty of just being yourself, even if that means rejecting the social structures that are supposed to define you. And the tension between these two worlds is the central conflict of the film. Not just about Julie choosing between Randy and her friends, but about Julie choosing between living in her bubble of privilege or stepping out into the unpredictable and often messy world of self-discovery. As Julie and Randy's relationship unfolds, we see how they challenge each other's beliefs and help each other break free from the roles that they've been pigeonholed into. Julie learns that she doesn't have to be the perfect, pristine valley girl that everyone expects her to be. She can embrace her imperfections, her individuality, and those parts of herself that don't fit into a neat, socially acceptable box. Randy, on the other hand, he learns that sometimes being true to yourself doesn't mean pushing everyone away. It means being vulnerable enough to let others in, even if it means stepping out of your comfort zone. But the film doesn't just play with ideas of class and identity, it explores the symbolism of youth, rebellion, and the search for meaning. The punk rock movement, which Randy represents, is more than just a lifestyle. It's a symbol of rejecting societal norms, of pushing against the status quo. And in many ways, the entire film can be seen as this kind of metaphor for adolescence itself. A time when everything feels like it's on the verge of exploding. Your emotions, your dreams, your desires, they're all in this constant state of flux. You're searching for something real, something true, but it's hard to know exactly what that is when you're still figuring out who you are. And there's a key moment in the film when Julie is forced to make a choice between staying in her comfortable, predictable life or taking a risk and embracing the unknown. It's a moment that mirrors the larger journey of adolescence, one where we all have to confront the question, who am I, really? Am I the person I've been told to be, or am I someone else entirely? And that's what makes Valley Girl a universal story. It's not just about Julie and Randy, it's about all of us, at some point in our lives, having to take that leap of faith into the unknown and discover who we really are. And as we explore the themes of self-discovery, identity, and rebellion, Valley Girl also taps into something that transcends its 80s setting. The film shows us that no matter what era we're in, these struggles are there. The world may change, but the core of who we are, the need to belong, the desire for authenticity, the search for identity, that all remains the same. So speaking of the search for identity and the idea of stepping into the unknown, let's move on to the next part of the conversation. How Valley Girl impacted its audience, the legacy it left behind, and why this movie still resonates with so many people, even today. Stay tuned as we dive into the film's reception and its lasting cultural influence. All right, now let's dig into how Valley Girl was received when it first came out. This film, it wasn't exactly a blockbuster when it hit theaters in 1983. It didn't have the massive opening weekend like some other teen flicks, but it still found a home in the hearts of the people who saw it. It was a modest success, and I think that's because it resonated deeply with a very specific audience. Teenagers, young adults, and really anyone who could relate to the world it portrayed. You've got to remember, this was right in the early 80s, a time when teen movies were really at their peak or taking off. But a lot of them were pretty formulaic. Either about the bad boy or the good girl, or they leaned into heavy stereotypes. Valley Girl offered something a little different. Sure, it had some of those classic elements, but it didn't just focus on that surface level teen drama. It went a bit deeper, giving us the characters that felt real, the emotions that were complicated, more complicated than the usual high school caricatures we're used to seeing. It had that quirky charm that made it stand out. It wasn't trying to be overly edgy or too serious. It just embraced what it was. A fun, light-hearted romance that also reflected the awkwardness of growing up. And I think that's part of the reason it's built such a loyal following. The way it captured the California culture. The vowel speak thing with words like the phrase "gag me with a spoon" became iconic. And I mean, who didn't love that totally 80s vibe with the bright neon colors, the big hair, and wonderful music? And this soundtrack with its perfect mix of new wave and punk rock was another thing that drew people in. That was something that you could play in the car with your friends and feel like you were part of this world that the movie created. Because the songs, they weren't just background noise, they were part of the story. And over the years, the movie started to gain more and more fans. It became one of those films that people kept revisiting, especially after they grew a bit older and were able to appreciate the deeper stuff going on under the surface. This movie really benefited with that mid-80s VHS and Blockbuster video boom. For many, Valley Girl was the movie they could relate to in their younger years. But as they got older, it became a kind of nostalgic touchstone, something that spoke to them in a different way. When you're a teenager, it's easy to get caught up in all the drama of trying to figure out who you are. And Julie and Randy's relationship sort of mirrors that universal experience of trying to break free from those around you to figure out where you belong. But as an adult, you realize it's about understanding the complexities of love and identity and how messy and real all of that can be. And the film's legacy is undeniable. This is the truest form of a cult classic. Something that fans adore, but also something that's been re-examined and appreciated over the years in a way that was probably unexpected back in 1983. It's held in such high regard today, not just because of its nostalgic factor, but also because of the way it helped change how teen movies were perceived. In a lot of ways, Valley Girl redefined what a teen film could be. Because it wasn't just about over-the-top antics or the rebellious spirit, it was about finding your voice in the middle of all of that noise. And that made it stand out from the vast number of teen comedies of its time. And when you talk about Valley Girl, you can't ignore its role in shaping the landscape for future films about teenagers. It did something that was revolutionary in its simplicity. It focused on the internal struggles of young people. It wasn't just about external conflicts with parents or the school system. It was about figuring out who you are in relation to the world around you, and it gave us characters who weren't just rebelling to rebel. Randy wasn't some angry kid out to stick it to the man. He was just a guy looking for meaning in a world that didn't seem to care about him. Julie wasn't just another girl in a high school romance. She was actively trying to break out of the mold, trying to find something deeper in her life, a meaning. And that shift in focus really paved the way for other films to explore teen identity in a more nuanced and grounded way. And a quick mention of the impact of Martha Coolidge for a second. Her direction in Valley Girl really put her on the map. This was a time Hollywood wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for female directors. But Coolidge really broke through with this film. She wasn't just another woman behind the camera. She was one of the first to bring a fresh, feminist perspective to a genre that was dominated by male directors. And the success allowed her to keep pushing boundaries and, in a way, open doors for other women filmmakers. Without Coolidge's success here, who knows how long it would have taken for Hollywood to truly recognize the talent and unique perspective that female directors can bring to the table. It also showed that audiences were hungry for stories about real people, not just caricatures. There was a demand for films that didn't just depict teenagers as either the jock or the nerd, but as complex, emotional characters with depth and personality. Valley Girl created a blueprint for films that would come out after it. Movies that focused on personal growth, identity struggles, and the messiness of relationships, all while making us laugh, cry, and maybe even cringe at times. So when you look at Valley Girl today, you realize it wasn't just an 80s relic. It's a film that transcends its era and has become part of a larger cultural conversation. It helped redefine teen movies, and it solidified Martha Coolidge as a key figure in cinema, especially when it comes to telling stories from a female perspective. Now we're going to shift gears and move on to the heart of the conversation, the real talk, and talk about my opinion on the film's significance. Alright, now for the part of the show where I kind of get on my soapbox and I talk about my opinion. So, why does Valley Girl matter? Well, it's not just a movie about a boy and a girl falling in love. It's a film that stands as a turning point in the coming-of-age genre. It's more than a love story, it's about self-discovery, breaking free from expectations and stepping into your own skin. For one thing, Valley Girl redefined the way we look at teen relationships. It wasn't about the typical opposites attract formula where popular girl transforms because rebellious guy. This film flips that. Julie isn't just a simple Valley Girl stereotype. She is a complex, real person and not just defined by who she dates or what her social status is. From the very beginning, we see that Julie has a sense of self, even if she's still figuring out what she wants. She's relatable. She's not just looking for someone to change her life. She's looking to change it herself. And let's not forget, Julie is also given agency. She's the one making decisions here. Sure, Randy comes into her life like a whirlwind, but it's not a typical boy saves girl narrative. Julie's journey is about realizing that she has the power to make her own choices. Whether that's falling in love with Randy or deciding what kind of person she wants to be beyond the confines of her small suburban world. In that sense, Valley Girl broke a major barrier for how we think about female protagonists in teen films. Women in 80s teen movies were often portrayed as secondary to the male lead, either as love interests or objects to be won over. But in Valley Girl, Julie is the centerpiece. She's the one whose evolution we follow, whose thoughts and feelings we understand. And Randy, as much as he is a great character, isn't the one who defines her. Julie defines herself. Let's also take a step back and look at the wider context here. When Valley Girl came out in 1983, the idea of a female-driven teen film wasn't as common as it is today. Sure, we had Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but we wouldn't even have 16 Candles for another year, and those were still, for the most part, male-centered stories. 16 Candles does have the main female protagonist, but like I said, came a year later, and it had so many other irons in the fire, small stories that it was following. It wasn't like Valley Girl. So Valley Girl, Coolidge was ahead of the curve. She made a film where the female character was central to the story and not just in a stereotypical girly way. Julie wasn't trying to conform to society's expectations. She was trying to figure out how to express her own voice within the world around her. She was, in many ways, a reflection of what was happening in the broader culture, where women were starting to challenge traditional gender roles and assert their own independence. It's also worth mentioning how Valley Girl addresses the issue of class. On the surface, it is about a rich girl falling for a punk from the wrong side of the tracks. But the way Coolidge approaches this is refreshing. This is not some simplistic opposites attract trope. Julie and Randy's relationship is complicated because they're not just different in terms of their social status. They're different because they come from completely different worlds. But what the film highlights is that love and self-discovery aren't about class or status. They're about connection, understanding, and finding someone who truly gets you. Even though the film is undeniably a product of the 80s, the neon-colored aesthetics, the quirky dialogue, and the explosion of the Valley Girl slang, the themes are timeless. The desire to break free from societal expectations, the drive to discover who you are beyond what others want you to be, those resonate just as much today as they did back then. And honestly, I think that's mostly what makes Valley Girl such a significant film in the teen genre. It shows that self-discovery isn't always neat, clear-cut path. It's messy, it's complicated, and it doesn't always happen the way we expect it to. But the journey, as we see in Julie's arc, is worth it. We're all fighting, figuring it out. We're all just working to see who we are, and that's the part that never changes. It's also important to look at how Valley Girl subverts genre conventions. We've all seen the teen movies where the good girl gets transformed by the bad boy. You know the drill. She gets out of her comfort zone, rebels a little, and that's the point of the story. Valley Girl has that, but in a way that feels grounded and authentic. Julie isn't some shy, reserved character who suddenly becomes this wild, carefree spirit because of a guy. She's already got her own spark. Randy may be the catalyst for her growth, but Julie's journey is about her breaking free from the superficiality of the environment and finding her own path. And in many ways, this film also represents a shift in how we view teen culture. The 80s were a time of excess, but they were also a time of rebellion, change, and self-expression. Valley Girl captures that. It's not just a teen movie, it's a cultural artifact. It reflects the changing attitudes of the time, and in some ways it captures the essence of that era in a way that's relevant today. Julie's story is a reminder that no matter what age we are, we're all searching for authenticity, and maybe that's why the film continues to resonate. It's not just about a dumb love story set in a superficial world of high school. It's not just another rehash of Romeo and Juliet. It's about breaking down those superficial boundaries and finding what truly matters. Connection, self-expression, and the courage to live your truth. And that's something anyone can relate to, whether you're a teenager in the 80s or someone watching the film for the first time today. Now, in a lot of ways, Valley Girl is one of those films that gets better with age, and I think that's because of its themes. Self-discovery, identity, and breaking out of societal molds are timeless. But we also can't forget how it shaped the teen film genre and even how it influenced later films, particularly those focused on coming-of-age stories with more substance than just the surface-level drama we often see. And the other films we watched in this series can all be traced back right here to Martha Coolidge and Valley Girl. All right, folks, here we are at the end of another episode and an end of another series. And I have to say, rewatching Valley Girl was such a treat. I'm giving this one a solid 8 out of 10. It's got that perfect mix of charm, humor, and heart, and makes it more than just another 80s teen movie. And let's be real, the soundtrack alone is worth at least half of those points. I mean, I Melt With You by Modern English, come on, instant jam. And this movie stands out because of it both being a time capsule of 80s culture. The neon, mall hangouts, the slang, and a story that still feels relatable. I think we've all had moments like Julie where we've had to figure out what we really want and push against the expectations that other people have for us. And then there's Randy, who's just out there being unapologetically himself. It's messy. It's real. It's kind of timeless when you think about it. I also love how this film gives us both fun and substance. It's not just bubblegum pop visuals and quirky one-liners, though it has plenty of those. There's this depth to the characters and the relationships that makes you think, wow, they really went for it here. Like, yes, it's a romantic comedy, but it's also about finding your voice, standing up for what matters to you, and learning to see people for who they really are. And I'll admit I might be a little biased. This is one of those movies that stuck with me from the first time I saw it. Watching it again now, I caught details I've missed before. Little things in the dialogue or the way certain scenes were shot that made me appreciate it even more. Movies like this remind me why I started this podcast in the first place. To celebrate the ones that leave a mark. Whether it's because of a killer soundtrack or a memorable story or just the way they make you feel. But enough about me. I want to hear from you. Did Valley Girl make you laugh, cry, or cringe? Did Julie and Randy's love story tug at your heartstrings, or were you rooting for her to stay in the valley and ditch the drama? Hit me up on social media, or better yet, leave a review and let me know your thoughts. I always love hearing what these movies mean to you. If social media is your thing, come see me. I'm on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, at Real Talk. Occasionally I show up on X, at Real Talk Pod, or email, therealrealtalk@gmail.com. Now, looking ahead to the next episode, we're going to switch things up a bit. No series, no themes, just a grab bag of films that I've been watching recently. Think of it like a surprise mixtape, but for movies. Maybe some classics, maybe some hidden gems, maybe something so bad you can't help but love it, and maybe some things that are just bad. So if you're into that kind of thing, make sure you tune in. And if you're into things that are a little darker, check out our other podcast. It's Real Talk Horror Edition. And coming soon, Real Talk Grim Edition. It's just me telling the grim fairy tales and then talking about what they mean, the morals, and how they fit today's society. Oh, and before I go, don't forget, if there's a movie you think I should cover or an idea you have for the show, I'm all ears. Seriously, send me your suggestions. This podcast is as much about connecting with you as it is about the films themselves. All right, that's it for today. Thank you for hanging out with me and diving into Valley Girl. Until next time, keep watching, keep loving, and keep those reels rolling. We'll talk to you soon.